A vaccine is basically giving you a heads up. This is what the bad guy looks like, and please start making antibodies. So that way it gives you an opportunity to have all those defenses in place. So now if the virus does trying to come on board, come across your borders, you will have an army that's ready and it will take out the virus. Two things you want to keep separate. One is we make everything on the outside and then we inject the wanted ads into you. The other one is we create everything on the inside. We give you the blueprints and then you do all the work inside your cells. So the easiest way is actually you take the whole virus and then you just cut it up and then we inject that into you. Now, the problem with that is that you're going to make a lot of army pieces and antibodies against different parts of that virus. And some of them won't be very useful and some of them will be very useful, but you're going to make a lot of different weapons against this thing. Now, the second way of doing it is we just show you the spike protein. So one way to do it is to grow that little protein outside in a laboratory. We put that along with something called an adjuvant, which is a booster. So that's the one that says to your army, hey, pay attention to this little guy. I want you to make antibodies against this thing. We learned very early on that the spike protein is important. So that's something that we want your body to recognize. The other way is to have your body build everything. So what we would do is just give you the blueprints on how to make that little spike protein. And then your cells will make the spike protein, and then your army will recognize that and then build an antibody against it. So then everything sort of happens within your body. So what can we inject into there are blueprints. So one set of blueprints is known as the messenger RNA. So this is the blueprints that goes to the little factories inside your cell, and that's where you're going to produce that little protein. And so by injecting that, we could teach your cells to make that protein. For those types of vaccines, basically, they will put that little piece of DNA inside a cold virus. So a cold virus that you and I have gotten before, they will use that as a delivery truck. So by putting that little piece of DNA in there, the delivery truck will go in, deliver that DNA, then you'll start making the spike protein, and then you'll make antibodies against it. They were actually looking at using that idea to treat a lot of different patients that are missing a protein. Imagine if you had a disease where you're missing a particular protein, and because of that, you have terrible illness. So if I were to give you the blueprints, you could make that protein, and then therefore you wouldn't suffer with all those conditions. And that was really the dream of all the scientists that worked on this messenger RNA. Can we make these blueprints so that we can then give you different proteins that you're missing and treat many illnesses? At the same time, they said, well, we have this huge pandemic happening. We could make that spike protein and we could use this technology in order to help people to fight off this pandemic. And that's why we were borrowing the technology that they were using over there. And that's why it seemed so quick, because they had already worked 30 years to perfect this technology. So really, we were borrowing technology that has been built up for many decades for other conditions. And we're just saying, can we, use their technology and their knowledge in terms of fighting this pandemic? And so that's why it became so quick. And remember, we had every smart person in the world, in the scientific world, working on this all at the same time. So initially, they focused on adults because they said, let us prove that it works well in adults. And then once they do that, then they can spread out and do studies in more people. So right now, even as we speak, they're doing the study on kids. So once we have the studies that then say it's safe and that it produces the same kind of antibody protection, then you will see that the governments will approve it for use in children